The fire crackles gently beside you, sending up tiny sparks like stars trying to escape. Outside your shelter, the sky is heavy with mist and the scent of damp moss. Your blanket is not a blanket, it's animal hide, stick and stiff and slightly judgmental. The floor beneath you is packed earth, cool, slightly uneven, possibly alive. You are not in your bed. You are not in your house. You are in the Stone Age, and you probably won't make it through this day. But that's alright. It helps this humble campfire channel reach more sleepy travelers like you, because you're here to relax, to drift, to dream, to learn without lifting a single frostbitten finger. So before we chip this flint or chase any mammoths, take a slow moment to like and subscribe. And let us know in the comments where you're watching from tonight, and what time is it there in your world. The air smells clean, like it hasn't yet been disappointed by civilization. There's a distant rumble of water, a river, perhaps, or a stream trying very hard to impress. Now let's ease into tonight's journey. The sky is low, the clouds are pale gray. Somewhere birds complain quietly about the weather. You can relate. The world around you is both enormous and intimate. The ground squishes a bit under your feet, not mud. Not quite. It's not particularly useful, but it feels nice, so you keep it. This is your first tool, or your first comfort object. We're not entirely sure if it was a spiritual practice or a particularly stylish way of saying goodbye. In the Stone Age, those are often the same thing. More like prehistoric pudding. You notice animal tracks, deer maybe, something larger, something that's also very hungry. But because, frankly, it looks like it has its own problems. The trees are taller than modern buildings, ancient, dense, and full of things that buzz and slither. No hopeful pile of leftover pizza crusts. You step outside your shelter lean-to of sticks, mud, and good intentions. Stretch your arms overhead. Your stomach growls, which is your body's polite way of saying go find food or perish. It's icy, it bites, but it's clean, and you drink, cupping your hands like they were designed for this because, well, they were. It's divided into several sections, but for the purposes of this story, we'll just call it the time when rocks were everything and socks were nothing. You look around, no fridge, no bakery, just forest and rocks, and the kind of silence that makes you feel like the last thought in a dream. One major historical fact. The Stone Age spans a truly massive period over 3 million years if you start counting from the earliest stone tools. You walk toward the river. You find a smooth stone, palm-sized and cold. Your weird cultural tidbit. Some early humans buried their dead with tools, flowers, and bits of ochre pigment. Historians still debate whether these burial items were offerings, or just things nobody wanted to carry home again. And now the temperature has dropped in that special, subtle way that suggests the air is trying to assassinate you politely. You feel a little stronger, a little colder, a little more like you were made for this. You crouch near the river and dip your fingers into the water. Back at camp, you huddle over the cold, coaxing flame from spark like it's a romantic subplot. You watch the current twist around rocks and reeds. A bird flits across, low and fast. You do not attempt to catch it, not because you couldn't. Your stomach growls again. You reach for a root you think might be edible. Fire wasn't just warmth, it was protection, community, and a way to make food less terrifying. It was survival wrapped in flickering gold. It might also be mildly poisonous. You sniff it, chew the tiniest corner. You creep forward, try not to think about how fast prehistoric birds can peck, then spit it out. You need fuel, not just any wood but dry wood, and that, here, is about as common as a fully charged phone with 5 bars of reception. Your survival instincts are slow, but charming. You make your way back to camp as the clouds shift, letting through a shaft of watery light. You are not, but you're trying. And in the Stone Age, that counts for something. The fire is almost out. You stare at the dwindling embers like they've personally betrayed you. They haven't. You just forgot to gather wood. You shuffle to your feet, teeth chattering like they've formed a protest committee. You trudge into the trees, arms wrapped tight around yourself, scanning for twigs, branches, anything that looks remotely flammable and not currently occupied by something venomous. You find a few promising sticks under a fallen tree slightly damp, but you've lowered your standards. It takes a long time. Your hands are shaking, your nose is red, but finally blessedly a flame curls upward. You feel, briefly, like a wizard. One major historical fact. Early humans mastered fire as far back as 1.5 million years ago. You warm your hands, then your feet, then just sit there breathing in the smoke like it's a comfort scent. You consider breakfast again. You remember the route. You do not consider the route again. Instead, you look for eggs. You follow a small trail behind your shelter and spot what might be a nest. You find one egg. It's warm, speckled. You whisper an apology to whatever bird is probably watching you from above with disappointment. You return to your fire and cook it in a flat rock bowl. It smells like hope and protein. Obscure cultural tidbit. Some Paleolithic communities may have used hot stones to boil water in hide-lined pits, early sous vide. Historians still debate whether cooking methods were refined out of culinary interest. or just sheer desperation after too many raw snails. You eat the egg slowly, it's gritty, a little smoky, absolutely delicious. You feel stronger now, more awake, less likely to be eaten before noon. You take a moment to admire your camp. It's modest, but functional. One shelter, one fire, one stolen egg. A solid start. You notice a line of ants crawling past your foot. You let them pass. You're not in the mood for a turf war. The sky is clearing. The light changes. The wind shifts. You hear movement behind you. A rustle. You freeze. Is it danger? Dinner stick falling dramatically. You reach for your favorite rock to smooth one. The comfort object / tool. You are ready, you are awake. You are definitely not surviving this day, but you're doing it beautifully. It turns out the rustle was a rabbit. A large, fluffy, mockingly agile rabbit that looked directly at you and then bounced away into the underbrush, as if to say, "Nice try, rookie." You exhale slowly. Not from relief. From mild offense. Probably not. If they had, we'd all be a bit taller and have fewer stressed dreams about forgetting the firewood. You lower your rock, your comfort weapon, and sit back down, trying to remember if any of your ancestors ever successfully hunted something on their first attempt. You poke the embers thoughtfully. Today is no longer about eating. Today is about learning, and maybe not dying. Stones for shaping, sticks for spearing, vines that might make decent cordage if you politely ask them to cooperate. These tools were crafted with care, precision, and the occasional injured thumb. Archaeologists still marvel at their effectiveness, mostly while trying not to cut themselves. You decide to go scouting for tools, real ones. It slices, sort of. You feel powerful. Your breath fogs slightly in the morning air. The trees are full of movement, squirrels, birds, insects, leaves that haven't realized they've been dead for 3 months. You walk through the forest, stepping carefully over mossy roots and ducking under branches that appear to have personal vendettas. One major historical fact: stone tools, especially flint blades and hand axes, were the backbone of early survival. Roots, worms, a rock shaped like a sleeping turtle. In some early tribes, blood from a fresh cut was used as a bonding ritual, dabbed on tools, painted on rocks, or offered to the fire. Whether it was symbolic or just an excuse to feel dramatic remains unclear. You find a sharp-edged rock near a stream. It's surprisingly satisfying to hold. You test it on a strip of bark. Then it slips and cuts your thumb. Lightly, but enough to prove a point. Your dignity limps. Weird cultural tidbit. Historians still debate whether this was spiritual or simply the result of a lot of people handling sharp rocks barefoot. You fashion a crude digging stick and poke at the base of a tree. A bird calls from above, a sharp note, then silence. No food, but you feel oddly pleased. You found things. You made something. You bled a little. Sure, but so did most of human progress. The sun is higher now, filtering through the trees in gold-dappled streaks. A soft breeze lifts your hair. You pause, not for danger. It tastes like sadness and bark, but it's technically edible, and your body thanks you in the form of slightly improved coordination. Just to breathe, because even if you're cold, even if you're hungry, even if a rabbit just laughed in your face, you're still here. Fish dart just beyond reach, tiny glimmers of silver, taunting you with every splash. Still surviving, and the fire hasn't gone out. By midday, your stomach stages a formal protest. You respond with some firm negotiations, mainly chewing the last of your smoked root stash from yesterday. You decide to go fishing, which, in your case, means wading into the river with a pointed stick, and the kind of optimism that gets you through family dinners. The water's cold, it bites at your legs. The bottom is slippery, littered with stones and betrayal. You lunge once, missed, twice, missed again. Third time, you drop the stick entirely and very seriously consider just yelling at the river. You settle for a sigh so deep it echoes off a nearby tree. One major historical fact: Stone Age communities did fish, often using sharpened spears, woven traps, or nets made from twisted plant fibers. Success required patience, skill, and generally not scaring away everything in a 10-mile radius. You decide to build a trap instead. You gather reeds, bend pliable branches, stack stones in a semicircle. It's not elegant, it's barely functioning, but it's yours. You wait, and now, to pass the time, you hum. It's not a real tune, just noise shaped like comfort. The wind picks up, the trees rustle. Your trap sits in the water like a hopeful lie. This is possibly the earliest form of team-building exercise. Obscure cultural tidbit: some Stone Age groups used singing or rhythmic stomping to herd fish into nets or shallow water. Historians still debate whether these group tactics were efficient, or just an excuse to shout and splash around with friends. You smile at it, just to be civil. Present, you check your trap, nothing, but you don't feel discouraged. Just calm. The water swirls slowly. A few bubbles rise near the edge. A fish flickers past, clearly unimpressed. Then you spot something floating by, a smooth piece of driftwood, pale and flat. You grab it, maybe a plate, maybe a paddle, maybe firewood for later. Your stick is still sharp, even if your fishing record is not. In the Stone Age, everything you touch is something useful. or something to trip over. The sun dips slightly. You head back to camp. The fire is still lit. Your shelter is still standing. You sit by the fire, place the driftwood beside you, and warm your feet. It's the first compliment you've had in hours. You haven't eaten much today. You've barely gathered anything worth bragging about. In the flickering light, it looks almost like a carving board or perhaps something more decorative. You rub it clean with a bit of moss and begin scraping it with your sharpest stone. Early carvings, beads, cave paintings, and figurines like the famous Venus statues date back over 30,000 years. Whether these were religious, cultural, or just aesthetic is still up for debate, but they were made, which means they mattered. The day has been long, and your body knows it. Your hands are scratched, your back is sore, and you smell like river mud and modest achievement. But you've made it to evening, and in this world, that's a feast in itself. The fire's lower now, but it is still with you crackling softly like an old friend telling the same story for the 100th time. You stretch out near it, letting your legs thaw slowly. Across from you, the wind shifts, the edge of your shelter just enough to flap like applause. You take it personally. The moon has risen now, full and lazy. It casts pale shadows across the camp. Somewhere nearby, a fox yips once. Then silence. You pick up the piece of driftwood again. There's no goal, just movement. This is what counts as art now. One major historical fact. Even in the harsh conditions of the Stone Age, humans made time for creativity. The sigh turns into a shiver. The shiver turns into action. You press your tool against the wood and drag a line. You coax them carefully, feeding in bits of kindling, whispering encouragements that feel only mildly unhinged. It doesn't look like much, but it feels calming. You carve another line, a curve, a spiral. Everything is soft and blue and quiet, as if the whole forest is holding its breath. Something that could be a river, or a path, or a wish. Obscure cultural tidbit. Some archaeologists believe early people made patterns on bone and stone as memory aids, not unlike a to-do list, but with more symbolic flair and fewer groceries. Historians still debate whether these etchings were practical or just the result of having long winters and no board games. You pause to sip from your leaf cup of air water, slightly earthy, but filtered through patience. You wrap your cloak around you tighter and lie back, staring up through a gap in the trees. There are stars. So many stars. No names, no constellations. You recognize just light, endless and ancient. You close your eyes. Only for a minute, and the earth hums beneath you. You wake up cold, very cold. The fire has gone out. You stare at the gray, ghostly remains of your once glorious blaze and sigh. You sit up, bones cracking like branches underfoot, and begin gathering what you can buy. Twigs, dry moss, a few insults aimed at your own memory. It takes a while, but the coals still hold heat. Eventually, reluctantly, the fire returns. You feel a little like a god, a tired, smoke-smeared, deeply underfed god. You warm your fingers and look around. It's barely morning. The sky hasn't yet decided on a color. Time for breakfast, which means time to investigate yesterday's trap. You wander back to the river. There, sitting motionless in the water, is your glorious, wobbly fish trap. And inside it is a fish, small, confused, real. You make a noise that is almost laughter, almost disbelief. You scoop it up with both hands, gripping it tight as it flails in protest. You whisper apologies and thanks and maybe a short poem about breakfast. The coals sizzle, the scent rises. Back at camp, you clean the fish with a stone blade, rinse it in the stream, and place it carefully on your flat piece of driftwood. It smells like salt, like wood smoke, like survival. Not only did it make food safer, but it also unlocked nutrients and made digestion easier, giving humans the fuel to grow bigger brains. So yes, technically, your grilled fish is a step toward philosophy. One major historical fact: cooking meat or fish over fire was one of the earliest culinary innovations. Weird cultural tidbit. Some early human groups painted animals on cave walls, possibly as a form of respect or maybe just to brag about dinner. Theories vary. Historians still debate whether these images were ritualistic, educational, or just humanity's first humble brags. You eat slowly. Each bite is warm, slightly burnt, and miraculous. You lean back on one elbow and watch the sun break through the mist. You feel full, not just in your stomach, but in that quiet part of you that rarely gets fed satisfaction. You have fire, you have food, you have a carved bit of wood that might be a fish shrine or a cutting board. You did not get eaten. You might even make it through the day. A bird lands near your camp. It stares at you. You stare back, then it flies off with a piece of your moss blanket in its beak. You nod, fair trade.